right, today we're going to talk about how to navigate a high conflict divorce with keeping your sanity intact. So, particularly with a BPD or narcissistic woman. Take your finger and hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Hit the notification bell, and if you want content that is uncensored, a couple things a month, get on my email list. The link is in the description. So, yeah, this is mainly for this is for men navigating divorce, but women that my female listeners, the few female women that I have that watch me, this actually could, there's some benefit for you to watch this too, because we're going to be discussing really the BPD or narcissist or even antisocial personality disorder type of a person and that type of a relationship, and sort of navigating a divorce or getting out of that, and in the steps, okay? And in particular, doing so in a way that where your sanity remains intact, if as much and as best as possible. So, first thing, we're just going to go by the steps, and I'm going to keep the video as short as I can because I don't want to get lost in descriptions. I want you guys to have some actionable steps here. But first thing you need to do is you need to assess your situation. Okay, so obviously you're at the point where you're asking these questions. You're at a point where you're wondering if this is even worth it, right? Worth keeping this marriage together. You haven't been happy for quite some time, and you're wondering if this is if divorce needs to happen. So you need to assess the situation, assess where you're at, and possibly talk to some experts for that assessment, okay? And particularly, you do want to assess, if you're on this roller coaster of toxicity in your relationship, you do want to assess if this person that you're dealing with is along the lines of a cluster B personality disorder type or not. Now, the reason why, it's not a diagnosis. You're not a psychotherapist. You're not a licensed clinician. But you have to know the animal that you're dealing with in order to handle that dangerous animal. You know what I mean? And if the person is cluster B personality disorder, and where they lie on that spectrum and what the diagnosis might be, that's going to determine some of their behaviors and ways that they're going to handle this conflict with you. And it's not going to be normal. Dealing with a normal person who doesn't have a personality disorder, but where the relationship has gotten toxic, is far different than dealing with a person who has a personality disorder. Their way of thinking and their way of operating is completely different than you, assuming you're not one of these types as well. And it's different than any other person that you're going to have to deal with. So you can't deal with them the same way because you'll get burned. They're experts. BPD, or I'll use BPD as the catchphrase, but really we're talking about anything along the cluster B spectrum, including narcissists, including the different types of narcissists, overt and covert narcissism, including antisocial personality disorder, which tends to, be a male diagnosis, but, some women can fit that category as well. But there are certain characteristics and there's certain ways that they're all going to be the same, okay, in a sense of how that they perceive the world and how they're going to strategize and what their reactions are going to be, and so on and so forth. And so how you attack this problem is going to be a lot different if you think you're dealing with a cluster B personality disorder type than if you're dealing with a normal person who just is toxic, right? Or has a different disorder, like, has something where maybe an attachment problem or attachment disorder or what have you, It's going to be a lot different. And It has to be if you're going to be successful. And so that's why you want to assess the situation as best as you can. You may want to talk to a professional. Now, understand when I say professional, and I'm not talking about talking to an attorney yet, that's in the next step, but I'm talking about somebody who is well educated in mental health issues and can help you assess based on what's going on, if this person fits that bill or not, because that is again going to frame how you need to approach the problem. Now, let's say you're wrong in the assessment. Let's say you assume this girl is BPD or narcissistic, and she's not. Well, that's going to show up in how she handles the problems as you move forward. So she's going to kind of confirm or deny whether or not she fits the bill for a potential cluster B diagnosis or not, based on how she reacts to the way that you're going to solve this problem and the strategy. All right, if that makes sense. So having the assessment, it's not, if you're wrong in the assessment, it's not necessarily the end of the world, in the sense that, we'll say it like this. If you're wrong and you treat her like she's not cluster B, that could really have some bad effects in your strategy of exiting and escaping this marriage. But if she, isn't cluster B and you misdiagnose or misassess, I won't say diagnose because you're not diagnosing, but just kind of your assessment is off, then the strategy I'm going to suggest that you employ will still work out, and she'll just behave better, and she'll show herself as maybe not being that kind of a person. So just kind of keep that in mind. I'm not suggesting that you just automatically assume she's cluster B or anything like that, but it's definitely safer to employ a strategy as if she is, particularly if things are really toxic in the relationship, than to be wrong and assume that she's not and find out otherwise. All right, and you'll kind of see as we get into it as to why. So now the second step, so once you've made this assessment, so you've assessed that you need to exit, that you can't do the marriage as it is, as it stands anymore. So it needs to either end or something drastic needs to change, whichever, but you can't keep it continuing like this. So that's your assessment. So now you work and do a plan. Don't do anything without a plan first. And that plan, you need to plan your exit strategy, and you need to do so covertly without her knowing that you're planning this. Particularly if she is a cluster B type, you can't just treat her like a normal person with moral agency and sit down and have a conversation about how you're feeling and thinking, and that you're thinking that the relationship's not working out, and you're not sure what she should do and what you should do. You know what I mean? She is not a partner to you. So you have to understand, once you assess that she's cluster B, you can't treat her like a loving partner anymore. All right? She is not that to you. She has no ability to bond to you in that manner, and she never did. Okay? And I'll get into that part when I talk about how they operate here after this part. But she's not normal. She doesn't bond to people like you bond to people. So you have a bond to her. She doesn't have the same kind of a bond to you. It's totally different. So you can't treat her like this loving partner or like a wife, or like where we need to discuss our relationship problems, if you're at the point that you've assessed she's cluster B and that you need to escape the relationship. All right, because that will only give her warning that you're looking at escaping, and will cause her then to do manipulative and harmful things to you, involving children if you have them, and so on and so forth, to try to get ahead of what you're going to do. And she's probably better at strategizing and assessing you than you are her. Otherwise, you wouldn't have gotten into the relationship with her in the first place. Okay? So she's already better than you at this. So don't try to out manipulate her, and don't try to, well, I'm going to treat her like a loving partner and have this conversation, and then if it doesn't work out, then I guess I'll execute this strategy. No, that time is already done. I am assuming you've been 6 months to years trying to work this out with her and having several conversations. So now that you've decided to exit, you don't need to have a conversation anymore. What you need to do is you need to plan your exit strategy and then start executing the exit strategy, okay? And then if she turns out to not be cluster B and capable of repairing something, that will show up while you're exiting, and you can shift your strategy at that point. I will say, though, that usually is never the case, okay? So do it covertly. Don't alert her to anything. Start planning your exit strategy. Now, your plan of attacking your exit strategy needs to involve a very good attorney, all right? So you assessed and maybe utilize mental health professional or an expert in this. I mean, I'm not going to act as I'm not your licensed clinician, but I can help you assess that if we were in a session. And once that assessment is over with, now you need to hire a good attorney who understands and knows the divorce laws very well, can advocate for you as a man, okay, and help you plan the exit strategy that's going to be best for you on a logistical, legal, and financial level. That's what attorneys are for. They're worth their time. We rag on attorneys all the time because a lot of attorneys are scumbags, but divorce attorneys and family law attorneys can be godsends, okay? They can be sent from the heavens. They can save your life, all right? So that's this part of the plan. When you plan in that exit strategy, you need to hire a good attorney. Now, everything I'm going to give you advice-wise from here out is assuming you're talking to an attorney, and if you execute any strategy, it's what he tells you to do before what I tell you to do. That makes any sense. Because I'm not a legal expert, and so you need to do things as you move forward in executing the divorce within the boundaries of the laws of your country, for my guys who are out of country, laws of your state, the laws of your area, whatever, they're all different. So you need to, protect yourself in that sense first and foremost. All right. So you got your plan now. You have your attorneys involved heavily every step of the way. And now here's what I'll get into now is just why assessing in the first place. Here's how they operate. All right. Now this is a generalization. If we're in a consultation, I'm going to help you assess this, and based on her behavior, there may be some nuances or differences in how you're going to handle it. Your personal situation may be slightly different than the general, advice. Okay, so keep that in mind. But you do need to understand kind of how they operate in at least this model, okay, this general model. All right. They don't have a cluster B personality disorders, people, whether it's BPD, narcissism, or whatever, they can't bond to you like in a normal manner that somebody without a personality disorder can bond to another person. They're unable to have normal human connections, okay? They're almost inhuman when it comes to connection in a relationship. They're unable to have that bond, period. They fake it. They manipulate, they do a lot of things that makes you think that they're capable of this bond, but they're really not. Everything they do is a manipulation for what we call supply, okay? And because even those that can be helped, so understand like borderline personality disorder, for example, is a spectrum. There are some that are not so heavy on the spectrum that they could actually be helped with certain types of modalities and therapies, like dialectical behavioral therapy, for example, could help some BPD women. However, as long as they are, in the midst of their disorder and the traits and the problems within the disorder are going to prevent them from having a normal connection with a romantic partner. All right, so they're just, even if they're not, they don't seem like a terrible person because they're not so far on the end of the spectrum. They can't have a normal connection with you. Any connection with you, even if they think that they loved you or love you or whatever, is all overshadowed by their personality disorder, okay? So here you are, assuming you don't have a personality disorder, bonded to this person neurochemically, so they're like a drug to you, and you have normal feelings of love and compassion, empathy, sympathy within your capacity, okay, to this other person, to this wife. She has none of the ability to have those things to you. And any neurochemical reactions she's getting has to do with supply and manipulation, does not have to do, like those neurochemicals that she gets, because she gets those, are not due to normal bonding. They're due to things that her disorder creates, okay? So you have to understand that, and you have to remove any thoughts or ideas of considering her a normal romantic partner. You're going to have, as a man, a strong protective streak. You're going to want to protect your partner even though you're divorcing. You're going to want to be the good person. You're going to want to make sure she's taken care of because, you know, she takes care of the kids. Whatever your rationalization is, you're going to want to take care of this person, and you're not going to attack this problem in the cold Machiavellian way that you need to. And you will get burned by it because here you are protecting this other person and having compassion for them, and they have none of that for you. For them, everything that they're doing with you in the process of this separation and divorce is a strategy, and that strategy is to get more supply from you and to win. It's not to take care of you. It's not to look after you. It's not to do what's right. There are no principles. There are no morals. There's none of those things. None of the things. She will only present those things that as if they're there to manipulate you because they're there for you. You understand? But she does not go by any of the guiding principles that normal people would, even in a normal society, would go by. Okay? Oh, she only abides by those principles in order to get what she wants and out of it, and to win, and not be for any compassionate reason. And so you have to remove all of those feelings and be completely indifferent and completely separate from this. You need to attack this as if it's a business transaction with no emotional connotation or any of that stuff. Attorney will help you with this, because for the attorney looks at this as a legal problem to solve, not a emotional problem or relationship problem to solve. And so lean on that person. And I would recommend that you hire someone like myself, or somebody who is, given a lot of consultations to men trying to go through this, so that they keep you sane, okay, during this process. Because to you as a normal person, you probably loved this person at one time. You had this connection and this bond to this person. And so to you, it is almost, it's going to toy with your sanity to have to now behave almost like this Machiavellian person in order to successfully separate and divorce from them, and in order to protect yourself and to protect your children from this partner of yours. So it's going to play on your sanity, and this is why, following that attorney who looks at it as a legal problem to solve and not as a relationship problem is where you want to lean, and then lean on a coach, consultant, I would say therapist, but the therapist has to be an expert in this area, not just any therapist that your insurance will cover, because you're just going to get bad advice and probably it'll hurt you more than help you. But there's a lot of, clinicians, though, that are good in this area, and so if you hire one of them, that's okay too. But you need to hire somebody just who's an expert that can lead you through this process, because you will not be thinking clearly and normally during this process. Okay, you won't be. And this is why you need to lean on these experts who can be impartial and different for you when you're unable to do that. Understand, though, that your partner has no problems being impartial and indifferent. And any emotion she shows is based on neurochemicals because she didn't get what she wanted, or they're based on manipulative tactics and are not actual emotions at all. So, back to their motivation. Their motivation is what we call supply. So their disorder frames a bottomless feeling that they have about themselves. Okay, at the root of it, narcissists and BPD women are empty on the inside, and they need constant validation from the outside world and constant, to validate who they are and their value. They have no real personality or sense of value on the inside of them. So it's a constant need from the outside world and from their romantic partner. And that constant validation is what we call supply. Now, validation is not in the normal sense of someone telling them they're great, they're awesome, and all that, or doing things for them or whatever. It's energy and time and effort put into them. It's when another person sacrifices their values, morals, and who they are as a person for them or for something that they're doing. So in other words, supply, like, it can happen because you're putting positive energy into this person. Or you could be having a toxic argument, screaming at them, yelling, okay? Maybe even you get so crazy, you get crazy, and let's say you damage her property. Let's say you slash her tires or something because, you know what I mean? She's whatever, right? Things that you shouldn't do, of course. But I mean, let's just pretend you went there. Well, that actually is a motivator for them. That supplies that energy, that ego, that ego that's bottomless. So in the relationship, during the love bombing phase, they were trying to get you. So as they tried to get you, all of the positive energy that you put into them, I say energy, but I mean effort, right? Nothing like, not magical powers or anything. Nothing spiritual, esoteric. When I say energy, I mean just effort, okay? So you're putting this effort into them, or as they're trying to get you, they're bombing you with love and good feelings, throwing sex at you. You're the most amazing person on the planet, okay? And you're putting all of this effort into them because you're getting drawn towards them, right? And you think this is amazing and great, and you're in the best relationship you've ever been. And so let's say she gets that from you, and she can't get any more. She gets to a point where she's very secure in your dedication, love, and admiration for her, so she can't get much more out of you there. Well, what's she going to do then? She's going to start removing all of those good feelings, all of those things, and she's going to start creating drama, start creating toxicity, so that you now start jumping and through hoops because you are in love with this person. So you're going to jump through hoops to try to make them happy, to wonder what's wrong, you see what I'm saying? Even in creating a toxic argument is going to cause you to change your behavior. She's going to cause you to beta-tize yourself. She's going to cause you to sacrifice your values. She's going to cause you to, not put attention and time into other more productive things and to deal with her drama. So these are all things that supply her ego when she's doing it. You understand? So now all these things she did in this relationship that were toxic, and of course she would do a bunch of toxic stuff, and then she would, do something good, so then you would feel better again, and then that would keep you going. And guys will keep going with this for years and years, But you get to that point where you're ending it, well, she's going to try to get as much supply out of you as possible in the end. So what that means is she's going to continue, she will do toxic things to you. She would create problems, arguments where there are no problems, just to supply her ego. She's going to try to eke out as much supply from you, meaning effort and time, okay, even in a negative way, even in the most negative way, as much as she can. If that means creating a problem where there shouldn't be a problem, then that's exactly what she will do. All right? So that's her motivation. You have to understand that that's the motivation is for supply, first and foremost. The second piece of that, this is in particular if she has more psychopathic traits or narcissistic traits, is to win. So she's going to want to win at all costs too. And what winning is just whatever she perceives winning is. You know what I mean? If for her model of winning is to make it so you never see your kids again, then that's going to be what she's going for. If her model of winning is that she gets to keep the house, then that's what she's going to go for. And she will harm you or do whatever it takes at all costs to get that win. Because when you don't have normal bonding mechanisms to other people and you have no compassion or empathy for others, all you have left is winning or losing. You see what I'm saying? All you have, every relationship she's in, if she's, again, and there's a spectrum here, so if she's on the far end of the spectrum where she's showing narcissistic or psychopathic traits, every relationship she is in then is a manipulation so she can win or get something. It's not, there is no real bond there because she's incapable of that. And so you need to understand going through this divorce process that that's her motivation. When you understand the motivation of the enemy, okay, then you can start to predict your behavior and their behavior, and you can start to tailor your action plan to get the most amount of success you can out of, the deal, right? Now, if you were in a relationship with somebody, there were no kids involved, no marriage, the answer would be really simple, which would be the way to beat the narcissist, okay, is no contact and to become a ghost to them. All right, that is the quickest, most surefire way of winning and beating in that scenario, is that regardless of what your emotions are doing, that you go zero contact and you completely separate yourself from them. Now, in a marriage, unfortunately, which is why I don't recommend, one of the reasons I do not recommend marriage, okay, in 2020 anyways, in most countries, is because it makes it so you can't just leave, all right? So you now have a process you have to go through, and if there's kids involved, particularly, then this person is in your life now with an anchor into your life for the rest of the duration of the kid's childhood. Until those kids are legally adults, they have this anchor into your life and you cannot fully separate. So they always have a foot in the door. This is very dangerous for cluster B types, right? Or for dealing with a cluster B type. So how you deal and handle this person is going to be, it's going to be it's going to be critical, you know what I mean? Because it's not a situation where you just walk out the door. And you're going to have enough. I mean, geez, breaking up or getting out of a narcissistic abuse relationship, which is what these are all called, regardless of her diagnosis, is hard enough without kids and assets and marriage involved. I mean, it's really damaging to your psyche, to your psychological makeup. And there's a lot of repair that needs to be done afterwards so you don't repeat the mistakes or have those the negatives of those relationships carry into future relationships. There's a lot of work that has to be done from that. So it's already very damaging even without the other logistical problems. You throw a marriage in there, a couple kids and some financial things, now it's a freaking nightmare. You know what I mean, to deal with. So now let's get into, actual strategy, and I'm getting more into the psychological aspect of the strategy, the psychological warfare part, not so much what steps you're going to take. The steps you're going to take is going to be something you tailor with your attorney, okay? I'm giving you the psychological framework that you need to have when you execute these steps. Because the biggest thing that guys do, I can talk about steps, and an attorney can talk about the right steps on, separating and getting out of this type of a relationship, but then you won't do it, okay? You won't execute it the way that you should. And the reason why you won't is because of what's going on between your ears. And I'll say what's going on in here because it's emotion-based. This person has manipulated your emotions and your own personal sense of value, and she's damaged your sense of self, okay? You've allowed her to do this, so you're not a victim. You allowed her to do it, but the point is your sense of self is damaged, and this will ruin or cloud your ability to make the right decisions in this separation, okay? So you need to understand the psychological framework, and you need to manage you need to work on repairing your psychology and your emotional framework in order to really execute this flawlessly, if that makes any sense. So, first part of the strategy is once you are ready to do it, okay, you have your plan in place based on your attorney, you have to do what's called an initial separation. This may mean that you're living in the same house, but you're sleeping in separate areas. But you have to separate yourself as much as possible from this person, because this person has a psychological anchor and a hold over you. You're immersed into this toxic scenario with this person. And so you need to, within the limits of what the law is, depending on whether you have kids or not, that'll matter. Depending on whether you cohabitate, obviously that'll matter. But you need to do an initial separation where you have minimal contact with this person, okay? So there's minimal contact going forward, except through mediators and except through, attorneys. Minimal contact, okay? And so you're going to have a plan on how that's going to look. Then you're going to sit her down. You're going to have this conversation with her. If she's too toxic to have this conversation in person without things getting abusive, without, cops having to get called, then do it over the phone and do it over distance. All right? But and again, go guided by what your attorney is going to tell you. But in any sense, this is what you have to do. You know what I mean? And so you have to separate because, again, psychologically, emotionally, you are immersed in this toxic relationship and you are effectively addicted to it. You know you need to get out of it, but your addiction to toxicity and toxic relationships will cause you to perpetuate drama, problems, and make the separation and the divorce and everything far more difficult. So the more you can separate yourself from this person, the better. If you could leave the house and live someplace else and minimize that contact, that would be the best answer. But I know that might not be what you can do legally without damaging yourself if you have children and you share assets. So again, go based on guidance of your attorney, but in the best way possible, separate yourself, okay? And minimize that contact. Now, in the course of that discussion, whether it's initially or whether, depending on how, because she might not let you, tell you, and she's not one to sit down and have a normal adult discussion with you without abuse and without drama, right? Otherwise, you probably wouldn't have assessed her as a cluster B person. And so either way, and you can put this in writing, this is what I recommend. Now, you don't have to do this step, but this will help you if you still are wrapped up in this person or if you have doubts. If you still have more of a one-itis for her, okay, this is going to help you. Because what this will do is it will prove that she is incapable of having a normal, healthy relationship with you. And obviously you need that proof. Or she'll prove it wrong and maybe she is capable, in which case she can shift gears. Okay? So this is the step where if she's capable of having a normal, healthy relationship and you were wrong in all your assessments of who she is, okay, as being a personality disorder person, whatever, then she will show that her capabilities when you execute this step. And so this step is to lay out conditions. You say, hey, I'm not happy. I can't go on with the relationship as it is now. Here are some, if you want to stay married and work on the relationship, here are some conditions that would take for me to consider it, okay? And those conditions should involve therapy, okay? Should involve her going and talking to a professional, not you both going to couples counseling, her talking to a professional, and her being able to admit and face the problems that she has and the toxicity that she's bringing to the relationship. This is not, she has to eat shit here. This is not where you talk about your wrongs and she talks about her. This is not handling an argument or handling a conflict with a normal person. This is a person who has to, it's like dealing with an alcoholic or someone with substance abuse problem, okay? They have to admit that they have a problem and then go seek help, all right? So in your set of conditions, and there may be other conditions involved, you got children, whatever, and so in your sets of conditions, though, that has to be the key component to those conditions, is that she is willing to seek help. And seek help based on your guidance and according to your choosing, not just pretend to seek help by go to pick any therapist and fake, that she's making improvements, if that makes any sense. It has to be genuine, it has to be real. Like, 99 out of 100, she will not do it. She won't do it. She'll resist it. She will whatever. She won't even attempt, because these types of people, narcissists, don't think that they're the problem. They think they're wonderful. Psychopaths think they're amazing, okay? And everyone else is screwed up. BPD tends to be the same thing. Or the BPD will actually go a different way a lot of times. They will think that they're screwed up, their problem, they're screwed up, and they'll be hard on themselves, but it's not their fault. You see, so BPD is a little different. BPD or covert narcissists even will play the victim card, but see, oh, I'm such a terrible person, but they're a victim of something external that's causing them to be a terrible person. And how dare you expect them to improve themselves because they need help and love and care, and you're abandoning them. You see, it's a guilt trip on you for not handling their toxicity and solving their problems for you. That's what they'll put out. But it'll be still a resistance from seeking any sort of help. And they won't really be admitting that they're the problem. It'll be saying, oh, I'm such a piece of crap, but really I'm this way because other people treated me like this, or because of my childhood, or because I was raped, or because I was abused, or because you're so verbally abusive, or because you're not there for me, or remember when you did that one thing. You see what I mean? That's how that they'll do it, all right? There's a lack of forgiveness with BPD people and covert narcissist types where they blame you for the problem, and it could be because you did something 3 years ago, and there's no forgiveness or understanding there. You know what I mean? And that's why they're so miserable. When, of course, you know that they are just miserable, and that's why they're miserable. They're miserable because they have a personality disorder. They're miserable because they need help, and that they're the problem. Anyway, point is, you are going to force them through these conditions to have to face that and to have to seek help. Now, you can skip this step. But the reason why I say to do this, because a lot of people will be listening and go, why would you even care? Why not just get out of it? You know, most of my red pill guys will just get out of it and spin plates or whatever. Yeah, of course, that's wonderful. But I know that if you're listening to this and you're trapped in this scenario, or if you've been in this scenario before, I know that you're addicted to this person. And that's why I'm putting this step in there. I know that you have a psychological and neurochemical addiction to this toxic relationship and to this other person. Otherwise, you would have gotten out of it sooner, okay? That is the real crux of the problem here. And so this allows you, when you set the conditions up and she doesn't follow any of the conditions that you set forth, that if she were to follow these conditions successfully, you guys could have a happy relationship, right? In theory, right? When she does none of the things, okay, then you know 100%, despite your one-itis, despite your emotions, that she is not capable. And despite that it might feel like your heart is being ripped from your chest because you're addicted to her, you can walk away with your hands clean because you gave her all the opportunities to fix everything. So when she comes out and guilt trips you, tells you how terrible you are, and then tries to use you later, and tries to use you for supply, for resources, tries to cut, all the things she's going to try to do. When she does those things, you can look at that and say, and remind yourself, I gave her every opportunity in the world to fix the problems. And she did none of it. All right? So that is really why that step's there. It's not because I have any hope whatsoever that this person that, if she is this way, is going to make any improvements to fix the problems. If she was capable of doing that, she would have already been doing it. Okay? If she was capable of fixing herself and fixing these problems, she would have already been at least attempting to do that. And she hasn't been and isn't. So the assumption is she is not capable. Her personality disorder is too great, and she's not going to ever be able to be healthy with any person, you or another person. So, but you're going to prove it to yourself with that step. That's an important step for that reason. Other conditions could be like, when we're separated, you're not dating anybody else, you're focusing on yourself and improving yourself. any kind of, repair or anything goes out the window if you start leveraging the kids against me. Like, these are other good steps you can put in that. And when she does none of the things you ask for, then 100%. Okay? So now we get into the next part. Okay, so you set the conditions. She's not, and as, by the way, you set those conditions, but you let her know that you're going to continue forward with the separation and divorce. Reason being is because separation and divorce takes time. If there are kids involved, for example, in the state of Michigan where I'm at, it's a 6-month process. No matter what, they make it a 6-month process when there are kids involved. That is by law. So the state, your area will have different laws, but it's not going to be overnight. So you continue with the process, and of course, if she's meeting a bunch of conditions, then you can shift that always. Chances are she won't, and you'll just continue with the process through to divorce. Now you work with your attorney then on that process, on the financial separation and the logistical separation at that point. Now, your mental framework when executing this is like this. You are going to want to take everything you can, okay? Again, Machiavellian strategy. Don't think fairness. Don't think, well, this is a fair way to go, okay? No. You want to look at what is the minimal amount that would be fair or that you'd be willing to accept in any of these negotiations, financial or otherwise. And then you want to go for taking as much as you can, okay, without looking like you're being unreasonable. And let your attorney guide you through that process. The reason you're going to do that, now I wouldn't suggest this if she was a normal cooperative partner and it was just a broken marriage. If it was just a broken marriage, you wouldn't even need to hire an attorney. You could probably just have a mediator or whatever, just somebody to help with paperwork, and you could probably work it out with that person without any toxic messes. You might have a couple arguments, but you'll work it out. It's two people who used to love each other, and now it's just a broken relationship, but you care about each other, you want to protect each other, and so you could have a normal negotiation with that kind of a person. But if this person is toxic, cluster B personality disorder, that is not how this will go. So she needs to think she's winning, right? So when you go to take everything you can, you won't get everything you can. What's going to end up happening is there's going to be agreement where you're going to get less than what you're trying to get. So when you are trying to take this and you get less of that, then she gets to walk away feeling like she won something. This is kind of important, Don't make her think, it's not about you making her think like she's losing and this and that, okay? She's already losing every day of her life, honestly. And she's losing because she wins by sucking you into problems, okay? She loses by not being able to do that. So what you want to do is, take on that strategy because she will always try to fight you to win, all right? Chances are. And part of that's that supply thing too. The more she fights you, the more energy, time, effort you're putting into her and the situation, and then that supplies her ego. So let her fight you while you're trying to take everything, okay, and being almost unreasonable. And then when she wins, okay, then you get to be like, you won, I'm so defeated, you know what I mean? And then she walks away creating less problems for you and less of a fight because she already had a fight. In other words, you're kind of presenting a fight for her to fight. You know what I mean? And allowing for that fight to happen, knowing she's going to win some of it, but you'll walk away with what was fair. And idealistically, that's the best strategy to take. Again, your attorney will guide you through the logistics of that, but that's your mental framework, okay? In terms of being strategic. Because she needs to beat you or feel like she beat you. And it doesn't matter if she thinks that she won or not. What matters is that you get out of it and you move on with your life and you have as much of your resources and as much of your ability to be a parent intact as possible. For you, winning is being able to be a parent to your children and having your resources as much as possible intact. That's winning for you and getting out of it. That's your win. So the win isn't fighting or beating her, okay? So that's what you need to keep in mind in your mental framework. And that's why you'll take that strategy, okay? At least your mental framework for that strategy. So, final thing that you're going to have to do with this that I recommend, this is where the coaching or the consultations with me come in. This is where hypnotherapy comes in. I'm a master hypnotherapist. Okay, we can do EMDR, NLP therapy. You need to get your mind and your mental framework right. And this means meditation. This means work on physical fitness in the gym, okay? Because your physical body and your mind are tied together, all right? And this means working with someone like myself to continue to keep your mental framework intact, because you're going to be in mental and emotional turmoil during this process, okay? And that's going to cloud your ability to do the actions that you need to take in order to protect yourself and to get out of this as cleanly, smoothly, and quickly as possible. And then it'll also cloud your ability to have productive relationships in the future, especially depending on how long you've been married or whatever, being able to move forward and have the quality of life that you want. You're going to be hindered by your mental framework and your mental fitness, okay? And so you need to talk to somebody like myself who can work on the mental fitness portion to get your mind right and to get you into more of an alpha state and to get you to not have an addiction to this person, to get you to not have negative connotations with women because of your experiences with women. You know what I mean? And to be able to move forward and have a happy, productive, good life with your resources and your relationship with your children intact. And working with somebody, like myself or whatever, that can help you with that mental fitness portion, that's going to be a key component, at least, into allowing you to transition and to do this smoothly. All right. So that's all the advice. If you have any questions, throw them in the comments. Now, those of you guys who made it to the end of this lengthier video, I appreciate it. Appreciate the support. On Monday, I'm doing an episode of Before the Train Wreck over at Entrepreneurs in Cars with Rich Cooper, where he's going to bring on an attorney and bring on myself, and we're going to talk about covert narcissism and how that shows up in marriages, and we're going to kind of continue with this topic, but I'm going to have Rich be on Rich's channel. I'll be on his show, and we'll have input from an attorney. So that should be pretty enlightening and pretty good. So if you like this episode and this is something that you're more curious about and you need help with, obviously call me for a consultation, but we got another show here in a few days on Rich's channel on Monday, and it should be pretty enlightening. Thanks again for the support.